Okay, we'll be able to do that. Leave my hair alone. Okay, so first of all, I'm using a headset for the first time, so we do a little bit of a sound check. If it's too loud or just right or whatever, let us know in the chat box. And I'm gonna have to figure out how to drink water. So we may need to take a break. If we fill up this room, I have to take a short break and get more seats. So we're keeping an eye on the number. The relevance of this workshop is probably not lost on a lot of you, but it's an ongoing need. And over the years of doing my own process and working with clients and making the essences in Alaska, I began to see a couple of things. And one of them was that the Alaska system has an amazing number of essences for trauma. So part of this is because of Alaska being a very raw and wild place, and there's naturally occurring things happening up there all the time: forest fires, massive forest fires, volcanoes, earthquakes, and so on. So the plant kingdom has responded to that, and there's quite a few essences that are considered to be earth healers, and you're looking at one of them here on the screen, and that's fireweed. So what I've done over the years is evolved my own understanding and my own way of working with people that had any kind of trauma. Um, and what I'd like to present today in this webinar, and albeit it's a short amount of time to cover a subject like this, but it's to find a simple, straightforward way to identify the trauma that we are holding and understand its impacts on us, and then see the easiest possible way in the way that requires the least amount of effort to release that trauma. So I wouldn't be giving this webinar if it wasn't for essences. And what I mean by that is that they are sort of the missing piece. There's a lot of people working in wonderful ways around the world in healing different kinds of trauma, but a lot of them don't know about the essences. So this is a really important piece to the whole puzzle. So I'm going to be starting with sort of get us all on the same page. What is trauma? How do I look at trauma? How do I look at the treatment of it? And to be sort of objective, to be more mechanical even, to look at it from a more dispassionate place, I think is important, at least therapeutically. I know a lot of you are therapists, and um, we need to have a different way of talking about it and holding this whole area of life. So I see unresolved trauma is life experience that hasn't been integrated, and generally speaking, it hasn't been integrated because it was too intense. There was too much going on at the moment to take a moment or take the time that it would require to integrate the experience. Um, there are various kinds of trauma. Today, talking about emotional trauma, and it is difficult to integrate because of the pain and suffering that is coming along with it, and that impact, that energetic impact of the trauma is actually imprinted on the nervous system and on the cellular memory. So there's uh, a hit, if you will, an impact to the physical body, to the energetic bodies. And if in the moment, which in most cases will be the way it is, we don't have the time or we don't feel like we have the support or whatever to integrate what just happened, then we just tuck it away someplace and um, get on with our lives. So it's stored in various ways in various places in the energy field and in the physical body. And then it's usually not till later that that pain starts to come up or some discomfort comes up, and we'll wonder where that is coming from. I wonder why that is there. So emotional trauma is maybe one of the more difficult ones to deal with because it is sort of come into the fabric of our energy field, and there's always going to be a personal and a collective version of it. So everybody is connected into the collective. It's just a part of our life. It's part of how we are. And so there's a lot of collective emotional trauma for various reasons. There's as many different ways of looking at emotional trauma as there are people on the planet. But because we're in touch with, to some degree, some more than others, but we're in touch with this sort of collective emotional trauma that exists on the planet. And then we have our personal parts of that. It's really important in the process of releasing this that we get clear what is mine and what belongs to the collective, because it is impossible to heal the collective emotional trauma um, without healing one's own. Uh, and by getting to the point where you're clear uh, personally, then you will have an impact on the collective. So speaking about it in personal terms, it is more difficult because there's a lot of other people that have felt the same kind of pain, that are suffering in the same way. So one of the first that we'll talk about today is healing boundaries and strengthening boundaries. It's really important to have strong emotional boundaries anyway. But if you are going to be working with your own emotional trauma and working with clients and patients with emotional really good boundaries. And again, what this does is it helps you contain or have a container for your own experience, and then you can still have empathy for that, and then have a container in a way to look at other people's experience and have empathy for that, but not to have it all mushed together. Um, so I've identified general steps to the releasing or the moving on of any trauma that we might be holding. And the first one is always uh, awareness. So we need to have awareness. How are we experiencing trauma? How is it showing up in our life? And we'll often, as humans, look at the symptom and we'll see, oh, I've got this thing going on, and we want to trace that back to its core. And what I'm seeing in my own practice is a tremendous percentage of what everybody has going on at the moment can be traced back to some trauma. So if we want to get really effective and efficient in our work with the essences and with healing, I'm, for instance, starting my conversations out when I'm interviewing someone and saying, well, have you experienced any trauma recently or in your life? Of course, trauma can also come from other times and in the collective past lives that we share. So I'm wanting to see how much of a person's experience that they're bringing to the table at that moment has its basis in some sort of shock or trauma. Um, as you do this more, you get better at noticing the things that are tied into it. And I have an intuitive approach, so I can also see when I'm selecting essences, oh, this is an indicator that the person is working with that, whether they realize it consciously or not. The second step is probably one of the most important ones, and that's to understand that on some level we agreed to the traumatic experience. Um, Granted, in most cases that's going to be an unconscious agreement. It's going to be an agreement we made on the spiritual level. It's going to be a subconscious experience. It's not something that we do. We get up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to agree to some sort of traumatic experience. Of course not. But I'm stressing number two because it's really difficult to have any movement forward um, in healing this really, really necessary part of our being, returning integrity to this part of our being if we're in the victim place. So it's simply moving out of I'm a victim to, on some level, I agreed to this, and I'm upgrading the room. So sorry about that. This platform changed its rules, and anyway, I will continue on. On some level, we need to, there we go. We need to get the support that we need from our therapists, the people that love us, the people that we count on for support, and be able to eventually integrate that particular piece of the thing. And that's, I agreed to this on some level. So these things aren't happening to me because I was in the wrong place at the right time. I mean, it may take some work with the essences to get to the place where we can, have that agreement. But once we realize that it's something that is strictly coming for learning, there is no other reason to have an intensely difficult experience. Um, so I'll go around this explanation a couple different ways. What I'm saying is that the only reason we have an experience of any kind is for learning. Uh, so if you're a person who's having a lot of these kinds of experiences, and short of the sort of collective level of that, then it's good to ask ourselves, okay, why do I keep having these traumatic or shocking experiences on some level or another? And again, the general reason is for learning. So then that brings up the next point, which is um, if we haven't integrated the learning from the experiences that we've had thus far, this is not going to really make sense. So it's important to get to the point by however means necessary, whatever means necessary, to say, okay, on a priority basis, this is the most impactful thing that's happened to me, and I haven't yet integrated it. I'm just going to orient my self-care and my the resources available to me to getting to the bottom of that. Why did that happen? Get the emotional piece of it, of course, um, but get the educational piece of it and say, okay, this is why I had this very difficult experience. Now it's going to take me a while to get that through all the different parts of who I am, but I did agree to it for this reason. And by integrating that learning and integrating that wisdom, then it completes the experience. It's basically saying, okay, so in the beginning I didn't understand, now I understand why that happened. Um, and yes, we're talking about kinds of experiences that are at the soul level. It's not something that is necessary to or even possible to understand at the uh, intellectual level. So the soul is saying, there's some learning here, and there are different ways. And I'm going to jump to number 4. Um, it is possible to without trauma, but first we have to understand why and how we experienced it thus far. At some point in the process, we can say, oh, okay, I'm no longer going to use trauma as a learning mechanism. I'm not going to attract those kinds of experiences. There's other ways I can learn, in other words. There's easier ways, less painful ways, less suffering. But you can kind of see the process. Most people are who are experiencing a lot of trauma in their lives are not able to, or not having the support, or not understanding how to get in and tease it apart so that they can stop the cycle. Again, the way to stop the cycle is to not make it about anybody else, but just myself. Um, Start where I can, integrate the learning, therefore integrating the experiences that I've had thus far, and then sort of get ahead of it so that I'm able to change my belief systems or whatever is uh, causing this pattern to keep. Now, it's basically impossible to give this webinar to talk about uh, emotional trauma without talking about self-care. So I'm going to reiterate that. Um, to care for ourselves to the point where um, we're taking more time and we're getting more help to integrate, to take care of ourselves to the point where we're living a quieter life. We have more space in our lives for contemplation and introspection and listening. And there's nothing like pain to remind you that there's a better way to do this. So I went through an experience this year of being in pain for a couple of months, and it basically stopped me in my tracks on a regular basis. And I said to myself on a regular basis, I need to get to the bottom of this. This is something that is built up over quite a few years. Uh, I have not been paying attention to this building up in the background. And I wasn't able to, or I wasn't willing to pay attention until it hit me in this extremely painful way. Um, and then I said, okay, so the concept of self-care is not new to me. I need to immediately start changing my lifestyle to bring more self-care into the picture. Um, and there's, thousands of ways of doing that, but simply saying, okay, my body is not able to integrate all this experience. I keep having new experiences perhaps that are sort of adding to that load. And so to change something, it's going to be how you take care of yourself. Um, so it's basically saying if there's any belief systems, if there's any programs that we've taken on from parents, from society, from the past, from the collective that are saying, no, you don't really deserve to take care of yourself. You just have to, deal with it. We want to let go of that level of programming and get to the point as quickly as possible where we're putting ourselves first and we're saying, I would like to just simply practice being in the present moment without feeling any suffering. Um, Making that sort of um, statement to oneself and backing it up with practice, then we will immediately start attracting less traumatic experiences or less drama in our lives because that's not what we're projecting. If we're dealing with a bunch of unresolved trauma, then a certain amount of our projection is about that. So we're saying, no, I'm taking better care of myself. I'm quieting things down. I'm dialing down the drama quotient or portion in my life, and um, I'm simply proving to myself that I like myself enough or love myself enough to eventually live a life without trauma. So there's some steps, obviously, um, that it's going to take all of us to get to that place, but it all is based in awareness, as I was saying before, but also self-care and self-love. Um, Now, we again want to get to we're doing this so well, and one of my therapists called it immaculate self-care, and I love that choice of words. It's to care so much that it doesn't matter what has happened before, and it doesn't matter what will happen in the future. That we've gotten ourselves into this place where a good amount of the content that was there has been released. Um, we have the understanding, we have the wisdom, and then we can, if we're in that line of work, then we can help other people with that process. Of course, we want to do our own work before we try to help anybody else with it. But so I'm going to move into um, talking about two essences, which I think will help. And yeah, I can stop here for a question or two, but these first two essences are about boundaries. So Angelique is asking, how will we learn our life's lessons for growth uh, when not triggered by signs of pain or trauma? And recognizing early signs. Yeah, so this is an excellent question, and it's simply, uh, I mean, if you were all in the room with me, I would be starting this workshop or this webinar out with a guided meditation. And the purpose of that meditation would be to get everybody into their centers and with their grounding really strong. And perhaps, sitting in the heart chakra and doing this work from there. Um, but the establishment and the strengthening and in the making that center so powerful that you're living your life from that center in every way possible. And then from there, you can kind of see things coming. You're more aware. There's more awareness of the subtleties. There's more awareness of how uh, experience is showing up in your life. And instead of having your attention be somewhere else and then bam, something happens, your attention is in the present moment and you don't get surprised as much. Of course, there's always going to be surprises, but it's to, again, cultivate present time awareness to the point where you see it coming or you're navigating in such a way with your relationship to your inner guidance and in your relationship to your that you can avoid things happening. And it may not even be a conscious thing that you're avoiding it, but then you go, oh, okay, so there was just a traffic accident because I was listening to guidance that said to take this turn. I took that turn and I was, that whole thing was avoided. Uh, and I think most of you, if not all of you, understand what I'm talking about, but how do you get there? Well, it's by cultivating and just noticing yourself, okay, the quality of my experience is a bit too intense or too dramatic and too traumatic, and I don't want to do that anymore. So through meditation, through listening, through uh, anything that helps you have a more present time focus. Um, so Covalite is the first one for the boundary piece, and this is probably a good remedy for pretty much anybody at the moment on the planet. Um, and what Covalite does, it's a really heavy copper ore. You see various colors in there. This is putting a quality of light, and it's a blue light for those people who are clairvoyant and can see these energies. It's putting a quality of blue light and energy into the field, into the aura, and it acts in two ways. That there's sort of a bounce back, so that we sense the strength of this in our energy field, and we go, oh, I have protection. Um, when my energy, uh, maybe I'm, projecting some energy out, and I can feel that there's this container, so I don't have to worry about my energy going out into the collective. But more importantly, there's a sense that I am surrounded by a strong protective energy, and I can sort of let go of, which is one of the main reasons, by the way, that people don't spend more time in their centers, is because they're busy defending themselves. So it's saying, okay, well, I'm going to have Coverlight do that for me. Then I can go back into my center, closer to my center, and just trust that I'm protected. And for many, this is the first step in understanding how to protect ourselves and how to have better boundaries. We don't want to be scattered. We don't want to be out in a reactionary way, trying to meet each situation as it happens. We want to meet those situations in the strongest place possible inside of ourselves. So the Coverlight is bouncing back literally these energies that are what we call disharmonious, or they're not uh, vibrating at the same frequency that we are. Um, they will then just bounce back because they can't get through the energy field of Coverlight. And this is also a good essence to build ourselves up to the point where our energy field acts as that um, boundary, and things bounce off the energy field instead of coming in. But for some of us, that might take a while to get that level of integrity back. Um, so the Coverlight is essentially maybe the first step for some people who are recognizing, yeah, I thought I had pretty good boundaries, but these things keep happening. So I want to strengthen, specific aspects of my energy or of my being, so that that's not taking the hit. We'll even have that experience on the physical body where a certain part of the body will continue to injure. Right side of the body, left side of the body, or some particular part. So the Coverlight is just saying, I will take care of this general need um, for protection and on all levels. We're talking about emotional trauma, anything with the emotional level, but any level that might be needed. And so again, if the person is an individual having a hard time with all the collective, all the collective stuff that's going on now, this would be a great essence for that, to filter out. A lot of this collective stuff, we choose to watch TV, we choose to watch the news, we choose to listen to whatever. And it's possible to, continue to be informed but not have the energy of that come into your system. Coverlight saying, yeah, I mean, the choice is yours, but you don't have to take the energy on collectively. Because there's nothing you can do. So you lose a lot of energy trying to work with the collective piece. And it's simply sort of like putting stickers in your body and then, trying to deal with 100 different puncture wounds. So if anybody has any questions, Coverlight, we'll take a minute to see those. And then we'll go on to the next one. Okay. Well, the next one we're going to be talking about is Yarrow, so you'll I'll answer that question in a minute. Yeah, just looking at the image is very powerful. When I first found this stone, I was in a rock shop in Butte, Montana, and they had a piece um, about the size of a desktop printer. I mean, it was probably 200 or 300 pounds. And I walked into the rock shop, and I immediately walked over into it. And my friend was talking to the guy that ran the rock. You couldn't pry me away from this piece. I eventually went back and got some smaller chunks, but um, so Yarrow, anybody who has worked with essences for a while and has worked with certain systems like ours, FES, there are quite a few systems in the world that have Yarrow, at least one or more. And the white Yarrow is um, the essence that most people, most therapists, most people that know about the plant, they're going to reach for that in any case, any injury, any trauma, any boundary issue. Um, it's an incredible plant. Herbally, it actually will stop bleeding, and a poultice is going to be very powerful to use for physical injuries. But the essence is basically saying there's not anything going on in your energy field that the Yarrow can't help with in terms of um, where there's been a puncture or a tear or a cut or an impact, whatever words you want to use, the integrity of the energy field. Now, the tricky thing about Yarrow is it always works with the mirror concept. When I tried to find out, again, when I met Yarrow in terms of making an essence from, I grew up with Yarrow, but when I got to the point in Alaska where I wanted to make an essence, I sat and did the usual attunement or meditation that I do with the other plants, and I wasn't getting anything. And I thought, well, what's wrong with me? I'm doing what I normally do, which is to ask, uh, in a sense, sort of merge plant and ask what its healing qualities are. And I could not merge with Yarrow, and I got really frustrated, and I, couldn't understand what was going on. And then it hit me, sort of this, light bulb came on. Oh, that's what it's for. It's giving off this incredible power, incredibly powerful white light, and you can't penetrate it. So that I had to find a different way. I had to look at it. Oh, okay, so I'm trying to do something here, and it's showing me what it's doing by not letting me do it. It's showing me what its energy field is about. So by bringing Yarrow into our auras, into our energy fields, it will show us where there is a lack of integrity. And again, for whatever reason, integrity will be from before this lifetime. It's a strong belief of mine, and I've seen this over and over again. The energy field sort of comes with us as the soul, and we'll have unfinished business from other times. Some of that will be a break in the integrity of some level of the energy field. Easier to understand would be the things that happen in this lifetime. Any strong or powerful injuries, any surgeries, any situations of shock and trauma. Yara will go around and point those out in a way that is very easy to say, okay, I have awareness, I have willingness, I give permission to restore the integrity to this part. And then Yarrow does that. So it's like putting patches on, uh, going to the places where the break is the biggest first and putting a patch there. And then your container, your energy field starts to be more of a container. Now, what Yarrow's doing with regard to trauma, some new information that came in the last time I made it, it's saying, being true to itself, it's saying, so if you have repeated emotional traumas or any kind of traumas, why not look at the part of your energy field that is being impacted by those? And in other words, maybe a simpler way or an easier way to look at it is that there's an opening from a perforation or a tear. There's an opening in my energy field, and that's how the trauma is finding its way into my physical. self. And just by looking at that and saying what needs to happen for that to be sewn back up, what do I need to do to heal that piece so that that opening is no longer there, then that kind of trauma stops happening. So it's possible just with Yarrow to go around with a therapist, with yourself if you're used to working in this way, and just go from one place to the next and say, okay, so here's this that's maybe the most problematic in life in terms of reoccurring, difficult, intense experiences. So I want to look at, um, okay, where is that in the physical body? Sit with that. What information can I get there? How is that hitting me with um, the emotional piece? Are there similar emotions, for instance? How can I sort of tease it apart on that level? Look at the mental piece. Maybe there's uh, thoughts that I can identify, belief systems I can identify that have something to do. And we sort of deconstruct this to the point where we can go in and put a patch on that place, and then that's finished. There's no more of that kind of trauma coming in. And as you continue to work with Yarrow, especially if you have a lot of this um, a lot of this has been collecting from the past, and you've got quite an inbox, to process. You can go around and take care of the worst ones first, and then just keep going. It gets easier as you go. And then the Yarrow is basically saying, okay, your field is now intact. Um, it's going to be a lot easier for you to uh, stay in your center, live your life, and create your life in your center. You're also going to have a lot more energy because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to defend ourselves and to sort of have the sentries standing next to these perforations. So it's a lot easier to let Yarrow do the work, let Coverlight do the work, and then we pull back to a place of greater awareness. Um, Evelyn is asking, how can Yarrow be used during a session? Um, I used, when I did more hands-on work and even in-person work, whether it's hands-on or not, you can put Yarrow, a couple of drops of Yarrow on your hands. As a Reiki practitioner, that is a fantastic way to work with that energy. You can also, with, of course, the client's permission and understanding, have them take Yarrow or put it on the parts of the body that are being impacted. You can use it on any level, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. But any energy healing that's being done, Yarrow will um, sort of like field, fill the energy field up with that energy. Um, and it's white light. I mean, you look at the signature of this plant; it's an umbrella of light, of white light. Um, Joanna, yeah, I mean, we can talk looks like, and the characteristics of someone who doesn't have good boundaries, um, or that needs stronger boundaries. The reason I'm talking about Coverlight and Yarrow first is because if you attempt to heal deep emotional trauma without good boundaries, and by the way, good grounding, you can lead to more trauma. It can be, okay, well, that wasn't much fun. How can I do that in a better way? So we're wanting to just address, yeah, if a person is kind of a Yarrow type to begin with, um, we always want to assess how safe the person is. You want to ask yourself that question, or if you're working with a client, how safe do they feel? I might somebody comes in and says, yeah, I've been traumatized and I want to work with that. I might take a month of giving them essences just to stabilize uh, their energy field and just to get more grounded before we even get into talking about the trauma. It's a case by case, person by person but in any case, and presenting it this way in this webinar, in any case, we want to make sure that the person has as strong a boundaries as possible before we start going in and working with the deeper levels. In grounding, it goes without saying, grounding is a component that um, the more grounded we are, the easier all of this is going to be, and the more grounded we are, the less trauma we're going to be attracting in our lives. So just checking. Okay. So now I'm going to move into talking about 4 different essences that you can take and work with personally or professionally. And the first one's rhodochrosite. Um, this is an interesting stone because it's one of the few polished, spheres that we work with in our system. I think maybe we have 2 or 3 stones that are polished, but the reason that I chose this one, one was the quality of the stone. It's a very high quality of rhodochrosite, but rhodochrosite in the raw has really sharp edges. First time I picked up a rhodochrosite cluster, I almost cut my fingers. Really sharp edges, and it works with a particularly sharp kind of pain. Um, if you use the symbology or the way that many people talk about this, a person has a broken heart. Um, the person feels that their heart has been shattered, and it's sort of made out of glass, and it's shattered into a million pieces. And if any of you have broken some glass and have gone to pick it up, you have to be very careful to not cut yourself on those pieces. So it's in essence to address that kind of pain in a person where it's maybe very recent. The shock or the trauma on the emotional level has been very recent, and there's still sort of these sharp, jagged edges. Um, Extreme care is necessary uh, uh, on both sides of that for the person to take care of themselves after that kind of experience, and whoever's working with them or caring for them. Rhodochrosite's basically saying, I can help you put those pieces back together. It understands how the sort of the anatomy, the energetic anatomy of that part of us, how that works, what that looks like in its uh, fully functional and in perfect state. And so it's able to say, I know what this should look like. I know that it's all broken up right now, but I can help you put it all back together. So it's very soothing. I'm putting it first because it is, again, uh, just to get the person so that they can breathe again, so that they can, um, take a nice breath without having that sharp pain. And the other thing about rhodochrosite is that it's restoring earth connection. So what happens, I haven't talked about this so much yet, but I will more in a minute. When there's trauma, it's usually accompanied. And what happens with most people when there's shock and trauma is they go out. They withdraw some of their grounding, they withdraw some of their attention and their energy from the physical body, and they go out to a safer place. We call it the spiritual realm or whatever. And to the degree that a person has had a number of these shocking experiences, it's entirely possible that they haven't fully come back from the last one, or the one before that, or the one before that. In fact, escalating kinds of similar traumas will point to that being the case. So it'll keep happening until you say, okay, wait a minute, I just need to come back from all the previous times that this happened and get totally back in myself. Then I can stop this from happening again. So it's just another way of looking at it. So rhodochrosite is really good for that, not only soothing the heart and putting those pieces back together, but getting us back in our bodies and sort of restoring that um, connection between the heart and the earth, um, getting it back better than it was before these things happened. I mean, that's the whole point of it, really, is, I've learned my lessons, I've got the educational piece, and now I'm stronger than I was before these things happened, and I'm more grounded and more connected than I was before they happened. Um, Having some video or audio problems. Well, what I was saying, I'm going to be talking about 4 essences that are, specific or out of all of our essences that we have in our system. These 4 would be coming up a lot to address emotional trauma and various levels of addressing it. Um, so rhodochrosite in reality, and it always changes in terms of screen, it's kind of a pinkish red, not so much coral. It can be a deep red. This one was a bit more pink. Um, Anne is asking, could rhodochrosite increase energy overall? I mean, again, the gem elixirs and how they differ from the flowers, we'll be talking about both. But how they're differing is that there's always this stabilizing factor uh, with the gems, and it's more anchoring, it's more getting back into the body, connecting to the planet, feeling the support of the planet, which you really, really do this kind of healing. It can't just be done from the spiritual level, or not all of it. So rhodochrosite is never going to increase any problems. It's going to help you deal better with the problems that you have. The internet just went down. Very poor. Yeah, I think we're still going, but you may experience some problems on your end with the connection. Let us know if that's the case. If we're still going out in the world, Orna, I would say that this is much more of an acute remedy. Yeah, so we're back. This is more of an acute remedy, um, with the exception of someone who just has an incredibly long history of uh, these kinds of shocks and this kind of emotional pain happening. But yeah, it's definitely an acute. Um, and the reason we chose the polished stone is because um, the doctrine of signatures, which is to attribute the way a stone or a plant looks, the color, the shape, the gesture, a lot of different things about its visual presentation, that leads to the healing qualities. Rhodochrosite needed to be smooth. It needed to be already coming in a smooth and polished state, so that um, in other words, there's been some co-creation. Somebody has worked with the stone, they've polished down the rough edges, they've taken those sharp edges away, which is essentially what the essence is doing for the person. Um, yeah, should make sense. So yes, the pictures are always from the stones that are being used. So whatever you see in any webinar or any presentation that I will or have ever given, it's the actual stuff that's being used. So next one is balsam poplar, and this is also known as cottonwood. Um, in Alaska, uh, this grows in various climates and various habitats, so it's also called black cottonwood. But balsam poplar is a smaller tree, and it's growing in the areas that can't support the larger trees. um, and any of you who have um, smelled balsam or cottonwood buds, which you see in above the catkin here. They're very sticky. The spring, the buds form in winter, but then you can go out in the spring. In Alaska, maybe the first week of warm days, and you can smell this. It's a sort of a resinous smell, and it's uh, part of the signature of this plant because it is the smell of spring. It's the smell of life force. It's the smell of fertility, things growing, and uh, there's also something called the balm of Gilead, uh, made from which comes from ancient Greece, I guess, made from the buds of this tree, and it's an incredible healing balm and salve, and it's a self-preservative, so it lasts forever. This essence is specifically talking about a certain kind of emotional trauma, and that's from abuse. And emotional abuse, uh, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It'll come up more, it'll be indicated more for the more physical abuse, but it's also working very much with the energetic aspects of those. And again, balsam poplar is a sign of movement of energy, circulation of energy. The tree will only grow where there's water close to the surface. And so if you're out in the drier parts of the world where this tree grows and you come across a stand of balsam poplar or cottonwood, you'll know there's water underneath the surface, maybe a spring or something. So it's very much about the healthy, calibrated movement of energy. And what happens on the physical level and on the emotional level when there's trauma is there's a freezing of that energy. It doesn't continue to flow in the same way. If it's really intense, it will actually affect the functioning of the physical body, uh, and it will be difficult for uh, maybe medical science to understand why that part of the body has stopped functioning in the way that it has. Um, the first case that I ever used balsam poplar, the person came in with a shoulder that was locked up, and I asked, well, have you, as a guy that was involved in sports, I said, did you injure it? No, it just flared up. It just came up out of nowhere. Um, so we want to have an understanding, wherever the flag is coming up. In this case, it was a blocked shoulder. In many cases, people will come and say, well, I have this physical thing that just came out of nowhere. That's how it's presenting. That's how we want to address it. Balsam poplar can be therefore used topically if it's showing up on the physical level. Uh, put it in a massage oil, put it on the hands, and so forth. And there will be many times an immediate response to this, a loosening up, and therefore the circulation is increased. On an emotional level, we want to increase emotional circulation, and what that means is, okay, so what are some of the most difficult emotions to process? Um, we're holding them, we're storing them because they're simply difficult to express and process. Well, one of those is anger. Another one might be shame. Uh, another one might be uh, just if pain is an emotion, I think of pain as pain, but you're sitting on a lot of this really strong emotion and not able to express it in a healthy way. Balsam poplar is going to help with that because it's going to feed energy to that process. It's going to feed grounding to that process, and you're essentially in the support of the earth to help you with that. It's like you don't have to do it yourself. It's really not uh, that easy or even possible in some cases to do this by ourselves. So it's saying I can soothe, I can come into the part of the body or the energy field where this stuff is being stored. I can help you let go of this emotional uh, content that's been sitting there for years and years and years in some cases. Um, and it's all about then just getting things functional again, having the energy moving, um, having the emotions be that old content be emptied out, and then you're just experiencing how you're feeling now. The body no longer has to carry that energy, and therefore the physical structure is stronger. The places that were locked in and so on are more flexible and so on. Um, now this is also specific to uh, women who have been traumatized, abused, and it has affected the menstrual cycle. And again, it's connecting back up with the energy, which we generally refer to as female energy. So it's the feminine earth energy, the goddess energy, connecting the woman or the man uh, in a very strong way back to that energy, which is it's not just a structural thing, but it's also regulatory and just helps to get things back to uh, a more balanced way. So it's having the earth help us come back to balance. So any questions about balsam poplar? Okay. If you have an aversion to seeing a picture, does it mean that you are emotionally frozen? I'm sorry, I'm laughing because there is a way of thinking about essential oils. The ones that you don't like how they smell are the ones that you need. Um, if you have an aversion to a particular picture, there's energy in these pictures. I mean, the energy of the essence in these pictures, and it's coming through the screen. It's not that you have an aversion to balsam poplar, but it's bringing something up in your experience. It's bringing something surfacing, something's coming up, and that in and of itself isn't feeling comfortable. So the best thing to do is keep breathing and take some time to tune into that. Um, there's just some little pocket of something that is already responding to the balsam poplar through the picture that you're seeing. Um, yeah, so many people, especially in a class where you have the screen and these pictures are huge, uh, they're as soon as before I even start talking about it, as soon as the picture comes up, people start reacting to it if it's something that they need and something starts moving. The point that I would make, though, in terms of the healing of trauma with essences, the release process is the last part of the process. Everything else that you've needed to do, you've already done. Maybe just a little bit more information, a little bit more understanding about the learning piece, the educational piece, and then the release piece is the last piece, and then it's done, and it never has to be, looked after again. So uh, the reason I'm saying this at this moment is because if somebody that's attending the webinar has um, this sense of something moving, it's simply the sort of instinctual intelligence of the body saying, oh, great, I've got a little bit of this energy, that's all I needed. This will move and we'll be done with it. It's not something that even has to be conscious for it to work like that. Um, so Orn is asking, the way I work and my experience in the work that I've done over the years is that essences are self-regulating, and I've never, maybe I didn't do the best job of formulating a dosage bottle for somebody because that takes practice and that's something you learn over time. But I've never sensed that it was too much. It was pushing a person too fast. I do always look at, like I said earlier in the webinar, how safe did this person feel in the body? How grounded are they? I'm not going to even go into talking about emotional trauma until I have a sense of how they are. And if they need to, get stronger, more grounded, we'll do that first. So we're attending to their state of being, and then we're saying, okay, there's a readiness here. We're not pushing their timing. And the essences won't push people's timing. They'll just do what they can with the permission that's being given. It does. Now, I will say to Orna and to the rest of you that if Balsam Poplar comes up and you're listening intuitively and you see this comes up, there are instances which I myself have experienced where this may be an indicator that there was some sexual abuse, and yet the person has completely blocked that out. And so as a therapist, there are ways to, open this subject for conversation. What I do, this comes up when the person doesn't have a memory or a conscious understanding of that kind of thing happening. I will simply work with the body. I won't involve those other levels yet. I'll just say, well, the body needs this. The body knows what to do with it, and just leave it at that in the beginning. And of course, as Margaret's saying, you're not just going to, for instance, have a client come in that needs all 6 of these remedies that we're going to be talking about. Maybe 1 or 2 at the most would come up, and then you would surround those with other supportive essences so that the whole package is easier for that person to take on. More about this one. Okay. So now, River Beauty, there's one more. River Beauty is in this list for various reasons. It is part of the fireweed family, and therefore it's all about restoration. So the River Beauty is again communicating an energy and a message that's saying, I'm here for you no matter what. I'm here for you no matter what the story is, whatever the history is, how deep the traumas were. The fireweed family represents one of the most amazing plant families on the planet because it's responding to floods, uh, forest fires, and so on. So it's saying, I will help you with 2 specific things, and the first one is grieving. Now, the point of healing, one of the basic points of healing any kind of shock and trauma is it's about integrating the experience through the integration, ending that cycle, doing that enough so that there's no more open cycles, stopping all of them or finishing them. And what the River Beauty does is says to the person, I can help you do the grieving because that's an important piece of this. If the shock was from, or the trauma was from losing a loved one, if it was from losing one's house in a flood, intense loss, it can't be processed in a short amount of time. It's going to take years to process it. Americans, generally speaking, are not really good at grieving compared to some indigenous cultures and maybe Latin American cultures. There's a need for emotional expression in the grieving process. Some of us aren't really that comfortable with that. So River Beauty is saying to help you feel supported enough to let go of the tears, to let go of the feelings, the emotions, the sadness, the whatever that you might have. And in emptying that piece out, which takes however long it takes, then the healing process can proceed. So there are also people who can't stop crying. So this would be good for someone who needs to cry, needs to grieve, needs to process, but also for the ones that are sort of lost in that process. They've lost their stability, and it literally works with the tear ducts to sort of rejuvenate and give the person the energy and the strength to, after that emotional content has been expressed, then they can stop. They can get back to themselves. They can get their stability back. So either side of that. Um, the color of this plant is magenta, as with the tall fireweed. And the evidence of that in both this essence that we're talking about and the fireweed is it is working very much, in my understanding, on the etheric body. Now, a lot of the traumas and the shocks they have, um, every single one of them is present on the etheric body. Not all of them make it through to the physical body. So it's necessary to treat the etheric body in every case. That's not something that's maybe that well known in the mainstream medical professions, but we want to attend to the etheric body. What the River Beauty is doing is attending to not only the physical body and the etheric body, but the emotional body. And this is an area of subtle energy that surrounds us, that is sort of the repository or the library of every emotional experience we've ever had. We want to have those all be either in the process of completing or completed. So to give strength to come back together, this is also an essence for someone who's been having the experience of a lot of abuse in relationships or just a lot of loss in relationships, and they've closed down around that. They've said, I'm not going to open up to that anymore. And it's saying, okay, so I can give you the strength to do the work that you need to do, let go of the trauma, get back in your body, and open your heart up again. Much more could be said, but that's sort of a basic understanding of it. And so if there's any specific questions on River Beauty, take a minute for those. And the last one, how is it different from what? Well, the difference in River Beauty and the other fireweeds, and I'll go back and forth here. You look at the signature, River Beauty's working with the water element. Um, the tall fireweed is working with the fire element, and generally speaking, with both of them are working on the third level. So River Beauty, more emotion, um, emotional component, emotional trauma. Fireweed maybe more general, the tall fireweed more general for any kind of trauma. But soul support is included in this list for obvious reasons. You have the three different kinds of fireweed, same plant as the magenta, but it's specifically for the deepest kind of trauma that a person can um, experience in a physical body. And the white fireweed is also the one that's working specifically to remove the memory of trauma from the cells. So we'll get to that in a minute, that piece of it, which is the end piece. But soul support can be used immediately, as soon as possible after an accident, after some sort of trauma has happened. Therefore, we encourage people to have it around, carry it around with them in the car, and so on. If a person is open to the collective kinds of things that are going on in this country and other countries, and they can't disengage to the degree where they can get their balance back, keep taking soul support. Because what it's doing is it's bringing you in from wherever you went out of your balance, out of your center, out of your alignment. It's very much about vertical alignment. Saying, okay, well, let's get the grounding back. Let's get this piece back. Let's get that piece back. Cotton grass is in there for the physical pain that can accompany some of these experiences. Malachite and ruby are in there for grounding. Get the grounding back, get the circulation back. Labrador tea is there for more of a horizontal balancing where uh, many accidents or injuries happen, uh, and the first thought that comes in is, I kind of had a feeling something would happen if I kept doing this, and there we go. You know, if I would have paid attention and slowed down or done something different, then I wouldn't have injured myself in this way. So Labrador tea is bringing more in from the extremes, going out this way, uh, you know, which again is a lifestyle thing where I've been burning the candle at both ends. I've been doing too much and then something happens. Cattail pollen again is strengthening the grounding connection to the earth, but also strengthening connection to community. I think it's important for everybody in the world to create non-traumatic community. In other words, have a basis, have a safe space where we can share it physically or virtually. This is a space that is free of trauma. It's free of drama, and to help you in your personal life attract the kinds of people that have moved to the end piece of this, which is I've done the work. I've done it in an easy way because I have access to essences. I've moved the majority of the residue of the traumas that have happened to me in the past out. I've looked at and changed some of my belief systems and my programming to, as much as possible in each moment, say I'm no longer willing to use trauma as a educational mechanism. In other words, the educational value of trauma is something I don't want to be involved with anymore. I want to learn everything that I've already that's already sitting there and needs to be integrated. But I want to, you know, live a life without trauma. I don't want to have things keep happening in that way. I want to elevate to a higher level of self-care, um, practice a higher level of self-care, and then see that, yeah, I'm in the right place in the right time. These things aren't happening to me. I've got a better relationship with the collective. I'm able to be more for myself and for the people. And if you're a professional, I'm able to be more present for my clients. So it really is about looking at it in a long-term um, way, looking at it in terms of, you know, am I back? Am I really present? Is there something else that I need to be looking at? Uh, Having the physical body help with that process, because it'll always show us what's not finished in our process. Um, Joanna, which one? Hmm. Um, which one? Oh, it's, it doesn't automatically scroll. Um, yeah, to attract a non-traumatic community, recommending cattail pollen alone or soul support. I would recommend whatever it takes. If you have a group of people who have been doing this work, and many of us have been doing this work for a long time, things have escalated on the planet in the United States and elsewhere recently. And my takeaway from that was, one, I need to be more in community. Two, what kind of community do I want to be involved in? And because of the technology we have, it's possible for us to have community, a collection of people all over the planet. And so we're saying two things. One, I'm taking care of myself. I'm doing the work, getting the work, getting the help to do the work from other people. And then I'm wanting to join together with people who are doing the same thing so that I see, oh, there's this person who has dealt with this and then can help me, or I see, oh, there's this person who I can help because I just figured this out. So it could be any essence. I mean, cattail pollen is the one that talks about strength in numbers um, and being fed by community. So not to get too conceptual, what we see a lot of people doing in the world is reacting to trauma and then creating more trauma. And what I'm suggesting through this webinar and future webinars is that we stop that. We stop our participation in that, and we stop the cycle for ourselves, and then we can join together with others that are doing the same thing. Angelique. When we make a combination formula, we blend them first of all at the mother essence level. So we have the mother bottles for these 9 essences, and we put the same amount in each, the same amount of drops for each of these. And uh, blending at the mother level means that they then can create a new remedy. I mean, they're basically taking 9 times 2, 18 drops of mother essence and creating a new remedy, which we call soul support. So it's the sum of the parts, but it's more than that. If you make it yourself, you'd be using the stock to the dosage. And it would have a similar effect, but it wouldn't be as strong because you wouldn't have that synergy or that alchemy happening at the mother level. But with soul support, the point for most people and in most situations, get it however you can and take it however long you need to. It's probably the least worrisome in terms of dosage and that kind of thing. So we'll open it up for questions, and if you're all willing, we may go a few minutes over, but the allotted time. I just want to reiterate one piece while the questions might be coming in. Just to clarify, it's possible to live a life without trauma. How we do that is recognize the impact of the traumas that we've already experienced and know and trust that the essences can help us with whatever it was. In fact, there's nothing that's happened to anybody on the planet that can't be helped by the essences. So the first part is just the discovery process, and to have a qualified therapist help you in that is going to be a good thing. There's 2 ways to have this come up. One is through reoccurring trauma, and the other one's through pain. Or the new way is I'm going to go in, I'm going to be proactive, and I'm going to approach it that way. Then I don't have to have it come up in the more difficult way. But the boundary piece, I'm not going to really say that much more about it, but it is huge. But to recognize that it's all about integration, and the only thing that's stopping the integration from happening on its own is connecting the dots. So it's just, oh, I have the awareness. Oh, that's what that's about. Oh, I have the support for that. I get that. Okay, now we're done. And hopefully, many of you have already had that experience with essences, so you know what that feels like. Yeah, so I've discussed 6. You might have come in too late for the first 2. Basic question. What I recommend for clients with high anxiety is grounding and boundary essences. It's simply saying they're being activated by what's going on around them, and they don't realize necessarily exactly what's happening. So the 2 things that take you out of the field of anxiety is to your personal connection to the planet, and we can do that with essences like malachite and ruby. We can also do it by giving the person some exercises, some grounding exercises, movement exercises. But the other thing is boundaries. So we have a lot of boundary essences in our system, picking the ones that are the most appropriate for that person depending on their story. And so it's sort of like pushing away, okay, I'm getting a little more space, a little more space, a little more space. Now I have my own experience separate from everything else. You still might have some anxiety, but then you can deal with it in a much more easily. You can deal with it in a much easier way. Traumatized, yeah, this is a great question from Joanna. Traumatized people will experience the reduced ability to access guidance or have their intuition be working. Um, and they'll be a sense, yeah, I lost my grounding. Now, there's a way to look at that, which hopefully will make that easier to understand. The perspective is from the part that is left. Okay, so there's always the response of um, the part of the person that stays and the part of the person that leaves. If you're identifying with the part of the person that leaves, it's going to say, "Oh, I've lost connection. I don't know what to do. Where am I? I'm out here floating around somewhere." One of the things that soul support does better than any other single remedy is it talks to that part that took off and was out there floating around and saying, "You come back. I will give you the support you need to come back." And then the perspective of that person shifts back to, "Oh, I have guidance. I have grounding. I have." So it's a perspective. The perspective has shifted, and we want to shift it back. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, we actually gave this course in the UK in September for Penny up in Cumbria. I'd love to do it again. Um, just a second. And I would say about just to finish the question back to Joanna, um, to restore the earth, get the perspective back in the body. And yes, there are essences to open up more, in maybe a wider portal or a stronger portal or however you want to talk about it in terms of higher guidance, because that's an ongoing process. The point I'm wanting to make there is that we always have access to higher guidance, but we need to be present in order to get it. And if part of us went out, that's going to be more difficult. So the first thing you do is get that part back in. Deborah, Leslie. Um, I'm actually going to give another webinar specifically about PTSD, but I can answer the question now, and that's soul support. If you're working with somebody who has never used essences before, doesn't know anything about vibrational healing, but they've come to you because of the work that you're doing, and they're suffering from PTSD for whatever reason, soul support. And to, eventually as we work with people, we find out more of the story, more specifics about what happened. Then you can dial it down and say, okay, well, let's work more with River Beauty or more with something else. But soul support can be used in an ongoing way for weeks and months until, to stabilize the person. That's precisely what it's for. Um, for alcohol sensitivity, use the essences topically. Soul support is excellent topically because in many cases their shock and trauma has visited upon the physical body, and it will help just by getting it on the pulse points, on the temples, bottoms of the feet. Also, we have a soul support spray, and it's got a super high quality of lavender oil in it. Have the spray around in the room. Don't even have to spray the person. If you're out in a situation outside, accident or whatever, you can spray the whole area um, if it's possible. Um, in terms of people taking drops, yes, you can evaporate the alcohol in hot water in a teacup, pour boiling water over it, dilute it to the point it's not an issue. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. And there is a page on our website, How to Use Essences, which talks about this. in greater detail. Um, Ava is asking about black tourmaline and star ruby for grounding. What, in a larger workshop, I would be talking about those two essences as regards trauma. But black tourmaline is the main stone for taking toxic energy out of the system and out of the environment. So having a piece of it or holding the bottle of it, it's great for overwhelm and for just clearing the area because it literally sucks in toxic energy. It's also going to help a person be grounded if they are holding a lot of that kind of energy in their body and especially in their first chakra. Um, so Ruby, if you read about it or work with it, it's present time focus, present time awareness. Um, the soul support is just giving you 9 different reasons to be present all at the same time. The Chalice Well is here. I know some of you have been to Chalice Well, at least I think you have. Um, it's a sort of one-stop shopping for any aspect of support that you might need. So it's divine feminine energy, divine masculine support, earth energy, earth masculine and feminine support, um, mineral kingdom. Uh, the Chalice Well is first and foremost a goddess uh, energy, so it's reconnecting with the earth, reconnecting with the power of that. It's a healing energy in and of itself. And it's really popular for children because they need more of that energy. I would like to offer this workshop in the United States. I'm actually thinking about that this morning, and it would be next spring at the earliest. Fibromyalgia is a symptom that is on the outside of the onion, if you will. If you dial through that, if you work through in terms of the story and what's most people that I've worked with fibromyalgia, they have just got so many layers that it's sort of a constant presentation of pain. And so you just work away at those layers to get back to, you know, the sort of the seed, if you will, of the trauma. Um, I would recommend, some of the essences that we've talked about and some of the other ones. If you go into the Living Book, the online repertory part of our website, you can get a free 3-day subscription to that if you're not already signed up. And um, you can just enter the keywords, trauma. You don't use a lot of symptomatic keywords, but just, it'll bring up all the essences that would be helping with that. And you can dial it in terms of the specifics for that particular person. What do they need? Um, yeah, I mean, maybe the first class on this could be in Portland, Orna. Um, Angelique is asking about soul support. Um, you can take it from stock or however, we recommend people just have a small bottle or a large bottle around. Yeah, it's not necessary to dilute it unless you want to for some other reason. Um, yeah. So yes, we can definitely put that on the list. Um, and yeah, go to the website. There's a question about the Living Book. I'm just going to mention before too many people dial out is all 6 of these essences that we've talked about that today in this webinar are on sale, 25% off. And if you get all 6 for whatever reason, you get a box, either a small box or a big box. I feel like I've just touched on the tip of the iceberg of this. I thank you all for attending and for your interest and your questions. I am in the process of uh, researching other platforms for doing webinars. That's an ongoing process. We will be getting more of them. I would like some feedback from you all through email or whatever. If you think the length of this webinar is good, I could easily do 2 hours if people were up for that, and have a break in between, because it's really an hour and a half isn't much to talk about a subject that has this much uh, complexity to it. And I'm also always open for other topics, suggestions for other topics to talk about. So yeah, I guess, yeah, thank you all. And there will be a recording of this available in a couple of days once we get that part taken care of. Yeah, appreciate you all for this. And as usual, we're going to close the camera and leave the chat up for a second. So, bye-bye.